shower and the tub inside of it, which are incredibly expensive to execute.
Every time I hear that expression, wet rooms, I always picture something with sort of walking in, just being blasted with water.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where it goes.
Yep.
Like a car wash.
Yes.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Production Manager Ian Schwant.
How you doing, Patrick?
Producer Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
GBA Editor Kiley Jacques.
Hello.
It is a pleasure to see you all this morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Always good.
What have you been doing, Kiley?
Well, I've been working on a portrait series, but that's neither here nor there. I thought, in terms of what to bring to the table today, I've been taking this it's new to me. It's an old road. It's actually called Oldfield Road. It connects two suburban towns, Southbury and Woodbury, and I've been on it a lot lately, and I found myself thinking about the ranch style as a result, because this road is one of those, in the first appeal, dating back to when suburban towns were being developed, it's sort of like they're rural. They had a sort of rural appeal. They're not quite rural, but they're not city settings either. So this road kind of represents that to me. It's got kind of a rural feel, but it's also just a suburban town road. So it's dotted with ranch-style houses, and I've been looking at them and was thinking, and I stopped the other day and ran around and took a bunch of pictures of 3 of them, and it struck me that having grown up in a variety of settings in Massachusetts, some suburban, some rural, some urban, somewhere along the line, it was instilled in me that the ranch style was something to be degraded. I just sort of, I had a chip on my shoulder about it for some reason.
It was a little too lowbrow for
It was something, because, in a lot of suburban New England towns, you kind of like, it's instilled in you to appreciate colonial style homes and older homes and all of that kind of thing. Now, having come to Fine Homebuilding, I've been on the brand, I think, for now 4 years, and I have really changed my tune 180. I love ranch style houses, and I think they're really underappreciated. They are the simplest, most efficient, form out there. In terms of, not just energy efficiency, but floor plan simplicity and adaptability, flexibility. They offer a lot. They're, I could just sing the praises of the ranch style forever. but the reason I took these photos is because these houses, I got thinking, like, why was I taught to dislike ranch style houses? And I think the reason is production style ranch houses really dominate a lot of suburban towns, and they're cookie cutter and there's no character. These 3 houses are all very different from one another. They all are ranches, but there's architectural interest. There's a lot to be said for all of them. One has solar panels on it. My guess is that they were probably all built in the 1930s, and I think the fact that they're different from one another and they have a bit of a rural setting helps. But anyway, I just think that it's a shame that we are, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I just sort of feel like there's this disparaging attitude towards ranch houses, and I just don't think it's necessary. I think they have a lot going for them. And so Brian's house is a great, he's building a house right now, and I included a rendering of what he has in mind, or his planning. It's you can't deny it's a ranch-style house, but it's got a modern twist, and it's he chose that form for all of the reasons that I mentioned and others. So what do you guys think of the ranch-style house?
You go first, Ian.
So when I got my appraisal back and he classified my house as a ranch-style house, I was like, oh, how dare he talk down on my house.
Okay, so I am not alone.
And then the more I started looking at it, I was like, yeah, I did build a ranch house. It just doesn't immediately look like it. And then you sent these pictures, and I looked at the brick one, and I was like, wow, that's my house. Just with a slightly different
the brick one has solar
roof
panels,
line.
right? Yeah.
So for starters, the thing I observed about Brian's house is you, Ian, and Brian feel the compunction to like complicate what is an ordinary
Yes.
roof.
Yes.
Brian has this clear story kind of arrangement, 2 monoslopes with a little short wall at the apex.
Yep.
And he's having trusses, so it doesn't do anything. I don't know what the heck you guys are doing this for, but oh my goodness.
Did you ask
anyway?
him?
No, I didn't ask him because he's sold on it, just like Ian. I learned my lesson. So my thoughts on ranches are the perhaps most underappreciated quality of a ranch house is how easy it is to work on owing to how low it is. Like painting is not a
Yeah.
huge deal. Cleaning your gutters is no big deal.
Right.
Boy, that's the best part of my single story ranch style little house.
And you can age in place, which is a huge thing. And it's, the
And
transition.
I'm doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's adaptable form. You can be in it as a young family. You can be in it as an older person. Everything's on one floor. Yeah.
Jeff,
Yeah,
what do you think about the form?
I think it can vary widely. It's like, a basic ranch is about as simple as you can get, but then I've always loved like big rambling ranches that
Yeah.
get a lot more complicated, and it also kind of marries into the prairie school. So
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love this thing that people do with ranch houses where you have this like intermediate kind of breezeway, so it's this kind of in between inside
Yeah.
and outside space, which I think
Which is also
super
really
smart.
smart when you're
Yeah.
just separating the garage from the house. It's
Yeah.
a good way to do it.
Well, I appreciate your insights on ranch houses,
Yeah,
Kiley.
we gotta start loving on ranches.
Especially because they're easier and less expensive to
Exactly.
build.
Well,
and
that's
it's,
you
yeah.
make a really good point. They are
Yeah.
probably the most cost-effective form.
There's a
Yeah.
reason that like all the new habitat builds in places with enough room are single story homes.
Mm-hmm.
So, what have you been doing, Ian?
Getting jobs ready for the crew in the field. I sent you guys 2 addition jobs that we're working on. One of them is a sold contract job, and the other one we're in that like negotiating all the added options stage of a project that we go through. So that's
Do you do these ADA levels routinely, Ian, at your company?
we do, yeah. I think that's one of our specialties, and a lot of the existing housing stock in our area is really ripe for it, as the values have appreciated to a point where the client can actually financially justify the cost to add a second level to the home.
Listeners will be surprised to hear that was my first question to you was what are the housing costs in this neighborhood where you're doing this, because this is an expensive undertaking, right?
Yeah, no, it's very expensive. They're all typically 200,000 to 300,000 to add a level, especially if you add a bathroom to it, which 9 times out of 10 you're adding a bathroom to it.
I have so many questions, but fundamentally is how do you protect the rest of the house, or are these folks like gutting the inside anyway?
No, a lot of times we end up going over the house with a sheet of EPDM, and we use
That's
that as
Dan
like
Colbert's preferred
Yep.
technique too. Yeah.
Yep. Very similar to what Dan's been showing that he did on, I think he did on Instagram, some posts about actually leaving the EPDM in place and then building your walls on top of it and cutting away the what would be inside the floor plan of the room.
I think
Just
that would just
leaving
make
it
an
on your
amazing
walls.
floor covering. You just leave it there. You couldn't ruin it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so smart.
Wow. So you nail the plates through it and stuff, and it stays watertight?
I'm pretty sure that's what he did on the photos that I saw. I don't know if that's what we'll do or if we'll just have it set up as a
Tarp.
roll it up and cover at the end of the day.
Are those people going to live in that house while you're doing this work?
Most of them do move out and get some type of temporary housing, either with family members or Airbnbs or just apartment rentals.
That would be my advice,
Yeah, me
having
too.
done this and lived in the building.
Yeah, especially with
Get out.
Yeah.
the one that we're working on the contract for is a single story home, so it has no staircase going up to a second floor that exists. So we do have to do first floor remodeling to make that staircase work out.
What is the time frame for this? How long will it take?
Probably 12 to 14, maybe 14 to 16, depending on spring weather.
Is that months or weeks?
Right.
Weeks.
Wow. That's pretty good.
That seems fast, yeah.
That seems fast.
Yeah.
I think 12 months would be fast. I know it took me longer than that.
That's what I would have expected, yeah.
Jeff, you had any exciting plans besides like spring cleanup?
Not a whole lot. I put up
Okay.
a shelf, exciting things.
A shelf for what?
In our bathroom, we have a little Bluetooth speaker that, listen to in the morning, and it's just been sitting on the toilet tank, and sometimes it dances off. And
That could be
It's
a
the
bad
simple things
splash.
that make the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are doing a little redecorating the barn, as you both probably know, and you may have also noticed the photo I sent you this morning showed a photo of I roped Carol into painting at about 8 o'clock last night. God bless her. She remarked that I had Tom Sawyer to her at one point, and then later she said it was fun. She's like, "This is what we used to do."
I don't understand that
What?
verb. Tom Sawyer used as a verb. What does that mean?
You get someone to do your work, right?
Oh.
You convince people to whitewash the fence in the case of
Oh,
Tom
okay,
Sawyer
gotcha,
because
gotcha.
he's like, "Oh, this is amazing fun. You guys should try this."
That's funny.
So part of the project is moving our television. So what I do partially in the barn is set up televisions and then take them down and put them somewhere else.
It's like a hobby.
Cycle, yeah. So it gave me a chance to use this tool, which I don't know if you guys can see what that is, but Ian, you're nodding your head. Do you want to tell folks what I'm holding up here?
I believe that's a tool for bending conduit.
It is totally a half-inch conduit bender that I bought at a yard sale for $8. The price tag was still on it. And I am running the low voltage cable for my television in half-inch EMT, owing to the kind of law feel of the space. And that's the first time I've ever used it. And boy, is that fun. Oh my goodness. It's got all these, it has a chart stamped on it that shows you how to do offsets. I'm going to dive into that next and figure out how that all works because it's making my head hurt looking at it. Oh, so as always, we got some great feedback from our wonderful listeners. This comes from Carin. Dear FHB folks, just a big thank you for the conversation with Chad Gillespie. I'm a homeowner getting ready for an old house remodel with new HVAC and have been compiling a long list of questions to ask you guys, but Chad answered basically every question I had. I think Chad did more to assuage my electric skeptical self than all the discussions I'd previously read. I'm not going all electric in this remodel, but I feel encouraged about the role of mini splits and the idea of minimizing natural gas use for all the reasons Chad explained. I particularly appreciated that Patrick and Chad in their conversation explained clearly why we need to move toward having all natural gas use be at the plant end and not at the home end, which I had never heard mentioned before, much less explained. Briefly, so Chad was saying that it's much safer to make electricity with natural gas instead of burning it in people's houses individually who could have, problems with their houses that prevent, atmospheric venting of combustion appliances. He acknowledged that there are steps along the way that might vary by climate zone. He didn't condescend to the reluctant among us. He explained clearly why it's important to have these systems running all the time, why it's important to leave mini splits on and conditioning and not turn them on and off. He addressed the musty basement and ductwork questions. Well, that about covers it. I'm going to re-listen to the episode before my HVAC contractors make their next visit. Gratefully, Carin. I'm the one who wrote a while ago, writing about loving her triple track storm windows. Do you remember that email? I don't remember that one.
Either. No.
So Chad worked with me on the Fine Homebuilding house project
really?
for our house. He was the guy that helped me size and design the system. And originally we had tried to go with a ducted system, but we couldn't really figure out how to incorporate ductwork into my floor system, which was never designed to have ductwork in it.
You have
So-
iJoyce, Ian?
Yeah. Yeah. And they're at the max of their span. So for us to try and, with the floor system already in place, design ductwork into it, we went right to you're going to have soffits or built-ins, which was quickly shot down by the head architect of the project.
But so isn't one of the advantages of I-joist is you can cut the web to practically nothing, and therefore putting ducts in there?
Correct. Yeah, it had some to do with the cost of doing all of that work plus running the duct work. That just, from a financial perspective, because I didn't plan for it, it wasn't ideal for me. One of the houses that we're going to do that second floor addition on, we're actually using floor joists for that reason. So that
floor trusses.
Floor trusses. Yeah, floor trusses for that reason, so that we can have them engineered with the space laid out in them for the ductwork.
That's one of the biggest reasons proponents of open joist floor trusses or open web floor trusses cite for their use is that you can put huge ducts in there.
Yeah.
That seems like something that a lot of high performance home builders do. I keep seeing that detail.
Yeah, if I was going to do ductwork in here, I would have gone with the floor trusses instead of the I-joists. But it would,
why does no one want like exposed spiral duct in their high performance houses? I mean,
no, such a cool look. Of course,
did
if
you
have an
consider
old
that,
colonial,
Ian? Of course, there's no like probably Mitsubishi heat plant to use that stuff.
I think you could use their ducted heat pump for it. Not the mini split heat pump, but their regular ducted heat pump furnace style.
Yeah. And it has nearly the efficiency of the mini units, as I understand it.
Yeah, we're in the Matt Milham anti-forced air group. So trying to
well,
minimize
you mentioned once before that your
air.
wife has allergies to. That seems like forced air is really hard on people who are sensitive that way.
Right.
This next one comes from Dack, our friend. Timber framing, go for it. Right. Hey, Patrick, just listen to episode 437 and the mention of timber framing. Go for it. With your carpentry background, this will be an easy jump into, and a pergola is a great place to start. In order to flatten the learning curve, you might want to take a class. North House Folk School in Grand Marais, Minnesota. How'd you know how to say that, Kiley?
I don't know. It looks French. I'm a Francophile.
Did Kiley say that right, Ian? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Anyway.
Let's pretend I did.
Yeah, offers a 5-day class I took that was fantastic, and there were people from all over the country and Canada in attendance. Tom Healy and Peter Henriksen are super awesome instructors, and Peter could make pergola plans to your specs. Closer to you is Shelter Institute in Maine. I think they offer a similar program. I took their online course during COVID, and it was pretty good. This might be all you need to get going. Looking forward to the welding and timber frame projects. Dack. Well, Dack, if I need further encouragement for additional expensive hobbies, I know who to ask.
Patrick, that's so exciting. I absolutely love timber frame pergolas. I can't wait to see you build that. Brian built one, right? And that was in the magazine. Do you remember that?
Yeah, sure.
Do not. Justin did a video. It's gorgeous. When are you going to get going on that?
I'm thinking about getting a pilot's license instead. What do you think, Dack? That's what I'm going to do. This comes from John. Hey, podcast crew. I was listening to 437 and I wanted to chime in on the wood workshop heating problem. I'm in the final stages of my small wood shop remodel. I live in Royal Candy-Yohi County, Minnesota. Boy, I totally butchered that one, I bet.
That's a tough one, yeah. I can't help you.
Candy-Yohi? Do you think that's right? Which is firmly in the upper 6A zone, and I also had a previous 20 by 24-foot detached garage that I wanted to heat. One problem you're not considering with heating a wood shop is combustible wood dust. The problem with most heating systems is what to do with a dusty environment. Even with really good dust collection, there is still a lot of fine dust. So what I decided to do was make a radiant hydronic ceiling. I will attach the article I found that helped me lay everything out. I used basic double-paned vinyl windows and patio door, basic steel door, and an R21 garage door. I insulated the floor with R7.5 XPS foam and the subfloor with R13 bubble infrared insulation with the taped seams everywhere. This winter, it was a glorious 70 degrees using 7 kilowatt electric boiler set to 105 degree water temperature while it was minus 20 outside. It ends up adding about $30 a month to my electric bill this winter. I think my modeled heat load was around 7,000 BTUs an hour at minus 30 and 75 degrees inside. I always love the pod, and stay frosty. Thanks, John. Well, what do you think, Ian? Pretty conventional build. Put the radiant in the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it in floor slab if you could. I think that's a better job than the ceiling, but if
Because
it's a
heat wants to go
retrofit-
up, right?
Yeah, if it's a retrofit, I think that's a good option. I've seen people put it in walls as well, do actual radiant wall panels.
What do you guys think of his use of the foil face bubble wrap as insulation? I can hear Martin's little voice going. "Ah!" His article debunking the product has been
so
at the top
R7
of the list for
What do they
GBA
say?
popular articles for about a year. I don't know if he gave the R value of it. I don't think he did.
Let's just say that the R value that Reflectix gives the material is a little optimistic, we should say.
Right. It's about the assembly, not the product. Yeah.
Well, John, thanks. I think that's a great idea. I don't know how dangerous it is wood dust in a wood shop unless you're in an industrial setting with tons of wood particles. Of
Do you
course,
think-
that's explosive even. It's super dangerous, but I would be surprised if you could get that much dust in the air in a normal wood shop. But it is something good to think about.
Well, isn't that where an air purifier might be a good idea for those smaller particle of dust? Of smaller dust
For a
particles?
number of reasons, it just makes it more pleasant to be out there, right? If you have a good air purifier, air filter.
And they're so cheap now.
Right.
You can get really inexpensive ones that do a pretty good job. So there's no reason not to have one of those in your shop. Most of them you can set to run for an hour after you leave and just automatically shut off to clear the air.
We
I
have
think
a good.
a lot of remodelers use those now to keep their clients' homes cleaner, which seems smart to me. What were you going to say, Kiley?
Just that GBA just recently, we have a good article on products if you are interested in air purifiers. It'd be a
Cool.
good resource.
This might be my favorite email of the week. Hello, Fine Podcast crew. Anderson here. I just listened to episode 439 where Ian talked about spreadsheets. I am also a huge spreadsheet fan. I used to run my own construction business, and now I've moved on to house flips and rentals, and I could never have done any of that without my trusty spreadsheets. I believe that the most important and overlooked part to a well-executed build are the design and logistics behind it. I've attached 2 of my own spreadsheet templates that I built, and I'm more than happy to share with the world. One of them is a general contractor financial workbook, which is pretty much a simple bookkeeping system. The other is what I use to plan my building projects. They are certainly works in progress, so any suggestions or constructive criticism would be appreciated. Without divulging any company secrets, are there any templates or workbooks that Ian or other professionals from Fine Homebuilding could share? Well, all I can say, Anderson, is you do not want my spreadsheet. What do you think, Ian?
It depends on what you're using them for. Are you using them to keep track of data or to produce data? It seemed like the ones that he sent us, Patrick, were really good for keeping track of data and organizing data, maybe looking for patterns in it. But for me, the holy grail is really being able to put in the lowest amount of input data and have that extrapolate out into an estimate. So for instance, if we're looking at a kitchen remodel, the goal for my spreadsheet work is really just to be able to put in the linear footage of cabinet and the square footage of the room and have enough formulas in the spreadsheet to calculate labor hours, cost of cabinet, do an average of MEP, mechanical time, and spit out a rough cost to produce. So,
Boy, but given the variability in such a project, Ian, how can you expect to have an accurate number every time?
I think you can have an accurate number to give someone a budget. So if you have a client who has this idea in their head about what they'd like their kitchen or a bathroom or even a small addition to look like, if you can give them that budget that qualifies them as a good client for you to work with, it's really powerful at that early on sales stage.
So you don't want to spend a lot of time on this project. You want to make sure that these folks understand what they're getting into. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly.
Very good.
Are there any kind of tutorials that would walk this person through how best to use spreadsheets to do just what you described?
So Sean McCadden has a few of them out there on YouTube and on his website. And then I would recommend getting David Gerstel's Know Your Number or Know Your Numbers book. That was the book that kickstarted my move from the field to the office. Mm-hmm. And he goes through how to build these spreadsheets from scratch without using somebody else's template.
I can say with certainty that the folks I know who make a decent living being contractors have a very good understanding of where their money is and where it's going. And if you don't, it is very risky and easy to get in trouble quickly.
Yeah, and it goes into understanding how projects are priced. I'm doing a web series for Fine Homebuilding right now of articles about the business end of construction. And the first one I did was the anatomy of a project price, where it went through how you get all of your cost of goods and your cost to produce the job. And I just turned in the follow-up piece, which is going through the process of adding gross profit margin to a project based on what you need to earn as a company to stay in business. And I think looking at the project cost that way, it really helps with the spreadsheets to understand that you're looking for a cost to produce number and not necessarily a cost to tell the client number.
Boy, those are going to be helpful articles, Ian.
Well, Anderson, keep your spreadsheets updated is all.
Keep changing them. Don't be afraid to scrap one and tweak it and see what it generates that looks different, after you make some changes to it. They're so easy to just save multiple versions of and tweak and mess around with.
I think one of the great things about that technology is the ease with which you can update, right? You can quickly adjust for changes in material costs or labor rates, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The sheet that I use on a daily basis has one tab that is all of our standard cost of goods. So it has all of the 2x4s, 2x6s, sheets of plywood or OSB that we buy regularly, all cataloged and priced. And those prices are then connected to the formulas in the spreadsheet. So if I price a job and then the price of 2x4s changes, all I have to do is go to the one tab, put in the new price, and it updates everything.
That is extremely cool. Well, any of you out there listening who think you have a good spreadsheet, let's see it. This comes from Kyle. Kyle's a neighbor. Hey guys from FHB, I just noticed your base is out of Newtown, longtime Monroe resident, and now currently in Woodbury. I just found you guys and have been listening to your podcast nonstop. I found the last few have been truly funny and also super informative, given I've been in the HVAC, mostly propane/oil heating industry for almost 10 years. The generator or electrician was spot on, and ductwork guys really are hit or miss with workmanship. Just a little backstory. My fiance and I bought our first house about a year and a half ago in Connecticut, Zone 6. Our house is a typical
Zone 6? Wait a minute. Connecticut's not Zone 6, is it? I thought we were Zone 5. I just need to know.
So are you talking like
I mean, he's in Woodbury, I'm in
growing
Southbury.
zone or Department of Energy zone?
Well, typically we're talking Department of Energy zone when we're on this podcast.
So he could be in 6, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, our house is
Kylie's
a typical...
Googling it. She doesn't believe you.
Right, so
I just feel like an idiot if I've been saying I'm in Zone 5 for,
We'll get
ever.
back to that.
Okay.
Our house is a typical late 60s colonial, original siding and windows. We're redoing it slowly but surely. I think he meant surely, but I love slowly but surely so much more.
Yeah.
I don't think he did.
That describes every one of my remodeling projects, slowly but surely. I was torn between siding options and new windows and doors, given they are original single pane. Given the age, electrical and plumbing, we are slowly rehabbing the whole house. It's 2x4 construction, and I was thinking vinyl with exterior insulation, but I hate vinyl siding, so we didn't do that. We decided, with all the work to do, to remove the outside siding and sheathing and go with zip, R9, tape, Anderson 400 series windows, new rock wool, and with this upgrade to 2x6 depth, we have overall R24 insulation. So they must have added to the studs. Now, there's a lot of talk between moisture barrier, air barriers, air permission, rain screens, new building methods, green building methods, old school, let it breathe. So Kyle is getting to the question here. There are so many different theories on the topics of wall assemblies. I don't want to overdo it, but on the flip side, I want to keep in as much heat as possible without having to add supplemental air to exchange fresh air. We've already changed from an all-electric baseboard heating system to a boiler with a hydro air system in the basement and first and second floors with zones and underfloor radiant systems on the first floor due to access in the basement. Oh my goodness. So Kyle wants to know what he should do with his wall assembly, near as I can tell. He already has whether a WRB in the form of a zip or sheathing, so that's solved. So the question is, does he put plastic vapor barrier on the interior or do something else? What do we think, team?
When he makes the comment without having to add supplemental air, does he mean that he doesn't want to ventilate it?
I think
he's talking mechanicals.
Or just
I think
mechanical?
He's talking about he wants a system that he doesn't have to add supplemental fresh air.
I will add here that when a house measures, according to the IRC, when a house measures 5 air exchanges at 50 pascals, that mechanical ventilation is required.
Or less.
Yeah.
Or less, excuse me.
Yes.
Right, yes.
So it's good to know. That can be simple, right? It can be a bath fan, an exhaust-only system, which have their drawbacks, we'll say. A balance system, an ERV, HRV is a better choice.
And for him, he could use one of those in-wall paired systems. I forget the name of them. I think
Lunos.
475.
Lunos.
There
We were
you
talking
go.
about those
Yeah.
last time. Yep.
Yeah. One of those would be a good retrofit system.
So Kyle goes on to say, I asked him some follow-up questions about the house because I think, spending money for a house that won't see that value is a risky proposition, especially for first-time homeowners. You never know what's going to happen in life. I'm guessing you're not going to lose your job, Kyle, if you're in the heating business, but, things happen, right? So he says, we bought in August of 2020, right before the market shot through the roof with the movement out of New York City during COVID. The house was bank owned and needed everything. The previous year, the house was listed at 180 and did not sell. When we listed it again, it was still 180. So they offered well over asking price and scored this house, which is what I understand first-time home buyers absolutely have to do in this market, which is crazy to me.
I know.
Anyway, he said, I asked him about budget to do this work, and here's what he said. As far as budget, we're fortunate enough to both be working, and we can fully understand the justification of price for what we get. When I heard of bathroom estimates for $70,000, I didn't know there was so many exclamation points there. He said we did ours with tiled floor, shower, glass kit, and a fiberglass pan for under $5,000. That seems reasonable.
I put in my notes, Patrick, that's like comparing apples to Wagyu steaks. But nice work, though.
Yeah. If you can do a bathroom model for $5,000, that's incredible.
Well, that's one thing that we tell clients all the time. If you're willing to go with a fiberglass shower kit, not move anything, keep your existing fixtures, we can do it for a lot less than 70. But if you want everything brand new, looking like it came out of the pages of a magazine, be prepared for 70.
Mm-hmm.
It's the tile work, right?
It's the tile work.
Yeah, it's the tile
and the bath glass. If you buy an off-the-shelf glass door kit, like I'm guessing they did,
it's only a few $100.
Fraction of the cost for a custom glass door or glass wall.
Do you think that most people wind up moving plumbing too? That's a huge piece of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And everybody wants to convert their tub to a shower, a walk-in shower, right? Which is
These days, yeah.
huge
Curbless.
cost upgrade, tens of thousands, I'm guessing.
Wow.
We're seeing a lot of people want to go with the full wet rooms, which would be a room with a shower and a tub inside of it, which are incredibly expensive to execute.
Every time I hear that expression, wet rooms, I always picture with sort of walking in, just being blasted with water.
Yep.
It doesn't matter where it goes.
Like a car wash.
Yes.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed the pictures that you sent over to me, Patrick. They're really doing a full job on that house. I got to give them a lot of credit. And I think when he talks about the 2x6 walls, he's counting the thickness of the zip R9
Of course.
in that to get that number, because he calls out R15 rock wool, which I believe is the 2x4 sized.
Should we answer his question? I mean,
What do you think about just going
What
with
is his
paint
question? I forget.
instead of doing a full vapor barrier in this case, Patrick? I would lean toward that.
so here's the thing I've learned about using paint as a vapor retarder. It's unreliable. And if you're in a middle climate zone that has heating and cooling, it can be somewhat risky, especially if you have OSB sheathing. Now this is insulated sheathing, so the risk of condensation on the sheathing from the interior space is very low, right? Because it's going to be much warmer. But if you do it correctly, paint can work, and I would think the safest thing to do with mineral wool, which is very vapor open, is to have a smart vapor retarder, which works in all seasons. What would I do? I would just paint the walls and get on with my life. That's what I would do.
I would ventilate and then not worry about it. But I'm a big proponent of the ventilating correctly.
Kyle's going to have air conditioning, so I mean his moisture load is going to be low, I presume, but there is a higher chance that the cold drywall could be a condensing surface if his vapor control strategy is not well thought out.
Did you read it the same way I did, that he has his hydro air system in the attic?
In the attic, yeah. That's how I read it too.
So then we would want him to insulate the attic rafters, correct?
We have to bring that stuff in the conditioned space, but the worry I have is that he has sized this stuff with the current energy consumption of the house, the current BTU load for this open space up in the attic. So, but Kyle's the right person to adjust this stuff, right, or dial down his boiler.
Yeah, I did go down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at these hydro air systems. I'd only heard of them one other time. And
me too. I had to look it up.
Do you want to tell folks what it's about?
Go ahead, Kiley.
No, I'm sure you have a better grasp. I just looked at it like 20 minutes ago, so I'm sure you have a better grasp.
So it's a heating coil inside of a forced air handler, but it's run by a boiler.
Right.
So
what's weird to me is now you need two systems with these systems. Right. You need an air handler, which you could use with a heat pump or a furnace, right? Yep. And you need a boiler.
Did you guys get the impression that he's got that system set up both in the attic and in the basement? Like he's got a dual
3 zones. So yeah, I think he has these systems all 3 places.
What do you think of the whole idea of like creating a box, for lack of a better word, around the air handler in the attic and insulating that specific, insulating that?
I've done that on other projects.
Yeah,
before.
Is it effective or?
I'm not really sure. If you use thick foam board and you tape it up good, is it any different than you're insulating the attic rafters?
Right. Does it interfere at all with
beautiful air handler coffins from podcast listeners? I think it's it's good in concept,
cheaper.
But I know those air handlers are not tested that way for safety, and
safety
it's like
is what I was thinking. Yeah,
that's not how most of them are installed. I would worry in that regard. You don't know what the warmer temperatures inside that box are going to do to the electronics inside, for example.
Yeah.
Kyle, What do you think about being on Pro Talk? I want to talk about
Talk to him about propane.
propane and heating oil appliances. It's something we haven't done. I think that would be awesome. All right. Well, this has been a pretty good show, and I finally feel like the podcast has arrived when I can say, we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. This episode of the Fine Home Building Podcast is brought to you by Jobber. If you run a home service business like painting, contracting, lawn care, cleaning, your to-do list is endless. From hiring staff to mountains of paperwork, not to mention doing the actual work that pays the bills. Jobber is a mobile and online app that helps you organize your business and look professional. With Jobber, you can quote jobs, schedule your crew, invoice, and get paid all in one place. Try it free today at getjobber.com/finehomebuilding. All right, well, we're back. This is from Bill in Southeast Georgia. Hey, podcast crew, I want to install wood flooring over a concrete slab that will be about a foot above grade. Can I use hardwood flooring or should I go with engineered hardwood flooring? After the slab is poured, how would you proceed? I assume I would put poly over the slab. Does the slab need to be treated before the poly is put over the slab? Would I then put pressure-treated plywood down for a nailing base? I'd appreciate your guidance over how to do a proper install. My preference would be real hardwood flooring so I can match up as close as possible to my existing old 3¼ inch wide pre-1940s heart pine flooring. If I use engineered flooring, I found a place called Goodwin Flooring that can do engineered or hardwood to match. Thanks, Bill. Well, I know Fine Homebuilding has covered this a couple times, how to put hardwood on a slab, and I think you just glue it down.
There's nothing in between?
You got to be mindful of your vapor transmission. If you have a lot of vapor drive coming through the slab, that's going to be a risky install, right? It could ruin your floor. It could, buckle from expansion. There's a company, Bostic, that makes a surface sealer, a vapor retarder that you put on the concrete slab that I've heard works very well.
What about epoxy? Would that work? No?
So epoxies are risky because they don't allow any vapor movement at all. So if you have a lot of vapor drive, they actually have a tendency to be pushed off of the surface, compromising. The bond is broken from the vapor drive sometimes. So you want some moisture to pass through, but not a lot.
Uh-huh.
What do you do in this situation, Ian?
Our good friend, Renaissance man, carpenter Andy Engel, did a full-blown no mold finished basement article in issue 169 of Fine Homebuilding. And I remember this article very vividly because I did this entire basement remodel when I was an apprentice with a guy, and I remember him saying, "This guy in Fine Homebuilding really figured out how to do it well."
That's
and
great.
I think
Love that.
that was my first experience with Andy's work, and I remember telling him that when I worked with him later on. But he has the 1-inch foam board and then alternating layers of sheathing over the foam board, and then you can do regular hardwood flooring install over that.
Does that change the threshold?
It does. It makes it hard to match up with another finished area, but the idea of this article in particular was like if you have your fun ranch house that you want to finish the basement of, and it's just an open basement at that point, this would be a way to do hardwood floors to match your main floor.
I'm going to say Bill in Southeast Georgia doesn't need the thermal benefit of insulation, and his floor is a foot above grade, which seems to make it like a less risky install to me. Bill, I would look at that Fine Home Building article that I'll link on the podcast page. I forget who the author is, but this it shows how to do a hardwood install over concrete slab. I think flooring experts would tell you that engineered hardwood flooring has less dimensional movement with regard to seasonal humidity swings and temperature swings than a solid hardwood flooring. I think if you could get that and can afford it, that's what I would tell you to do. And it would be a shame to not be able to match your 1940s era heart pine, because that is some beautiful stuff.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in his slab being a foot above grade.
Yeah, you're like, how's that work?
Yeah, I'm just not used to the southeast, I guess, and building details that work.
It must
there.
have a like block stem wall, was my guess, and then it must be backfilled, right?
Yeah.
What's the reasoning for that?
Do we have a cricket sound effect, Jeff?
Yeah. Insert cricket sound effect here.
I don't know why you do that. I mean, like people. What? Go ahead. You know.
Well, I'm thinking, clay soil and downpours. You could get standing water pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
What I don't know about Georgia is everything. So anyone from Georgia who's got insights on why you'd build this way, let me know.
Do they have termites there like they do
Yes.
in the
Yes.
Carolinas?
So,
Could
yes.
that be
Yes,
a
yes.
reason for
That could be.
wanting that much masonry sticking up out of the ground?
Yep.
That's a really good point. Mm-hmm.
Of all the horrible reasons to live in a cold place like New England, I would say the lack of termites is
Yeah,
probably
right?
on the plus side.
Agreed.
This comes from Adam. Hey, all. It's almost spring. Can any of you share your experiences with at-home soil test kits? My property probably has very different soil properties. The county replaced a culvert last year and regraded a third of my backyard. I don't want to have to spend a fortune on lab soil kits for all around my property. Any insight would be appreciated. Thanks, Adam, Bloomfield Township, Michigan. So I didn't even know what he was talking about. Do you guys know what he's talking about?
Home soil testing kits?
For what?
Well, that's the thing. He didn't mention what he's testing for. My guess, the reason most people want to test their soil is to get a recommendation for fertilizer formula.
They want to grow vegetables or grass, and you need to know what your soil is missing, right?
Or any number of other things. And yeah, you need to know your pH is the most important measurement to know. I would highly recommend. I compared the prices of home kits, and he's saying my guess is from what he's said that he's going to have to test different areas of his property because he probably has different conditions around it. So he would have to be taking samples and buying kits for each one of those places. I think that's what
That's what he's saying, and he does. It would be expensive,
right? And you could get a much more targeted recommendation and set of results if you go through your extension lab, which for him would be the Michigan State University Soil and Plant Nutrient Lab. And I can share the link, but they have a page that gives you the tests and the fees, so you can choose what you want to test for, and it's not that expensive. I mean, if you want to do some really exhaustive testing, but if you're just generally looking for your pH level and microbial activity and nutrient availability, you want to go to a lab because they're going to do the test, give you the results, interpret the results, and tell you exactly what you should be adding to your soil. And I have a number of resources. I totally geek out on this stuff. I spent about 6 years soil testing the Rose Garden in Seattle. It was a weekly thing I had to do, and I would send it for anybody who's really interested in soil biology, you want to check out the Soil Food Web, which is where we sent our lab tests. But so much fun. So is that a website, Kiley? Yes, it's a website, and it's a lab, and it's just full of information. And I don't necessarily recommend that that's where he sends. It's a little more advanced than the home garden. That's not really where he needs to go. But I'm a huge proponent and worked for one, the extension labs. That's where you want to go. And they're not that expensive, and they tell you how to do the test so it's accurate. These at-home tests, they're not very accurate, especially if you have varying conditions. And I highly recommend getting it. So, as luck would have it,
I happen to know someone who knows a lot more about this than I do. And what Carol said is that if you have disturbed soil, assume it's sterile for starters. If the town came in and put a huge pipe in your backyard, the soil biome was destroyed. Right? It's like it's there's nothing left.
That's true.
More helpful than that is that she suggested 2 fine gardening articles, and I'll put those on the podcast page so folks who are interested in this subject can look it up. But it talks about what soil testing is, what you should be testing for, and the various things that, how it'll affect your soil depending what you're missing.
And depending on what you're growing, that's really what you need to start with.
Good question, Adam. I love spring-themed questions. Anyone else have spring-themed questions? We'd love to get them. This comes from Carson from Oregon. Hi, FHB crew. Thanks for the great podcast. I heard episode 438, and it made me think what the equivalent stick framing method would be and how it might compare to concrete and printing. So Carson is referring to an interview I did with Zach Mannheimer of, what was it, Alquist 3D, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
This is a company that recently printed a Habitat for Humanity house in Virginia, outside of Richmond or in Richmond. And Carson was curious, do you think modular construction in factories would be the wooden framing equivalent? And how do you see it comparing? What is the current state of the art? When does this make sense? And can anyone buy them? I've seen Benson wood before, but that seems to mostly involve people still framing by hand. So Benson Wood is a company that does modular high-performance homes, and they're meant to be adaptable with service pods or mechanical pods as part of the build. Pretty smart. A Google search turned up Autovol, which looks more like modern car manufacturing, but with home modules. It's amazing to a non-expert that automation in manufacturing hasn't taken over the industry like it has so many others, especially to someone running into a lot of labor/skill shortages on a delayed project. Thanks, Carson. Well, that is a fantastic, Carson. And I know Ian was super psyched to talk about the future of home construction. Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah. What is the goal, right? Is it to build it cheaper, to increase supply, to do a better product? Like,
yes.
What are you all three? So, like, Benson Wood makes great stuff. My old boss Mason bought the Unity home that he talked to you about on Pro Talk.
Yeah, what model did he get? I forget.
The Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom or Zoom.
Zoom.
They're not affordable.
Right.
They are a high-end, top-of-the-market product, especially the custom Benson Wood stuff. It says right on their website, starts at 1.5. The Unity home.
I didn't know they were that expensive.
That's why the Habitat for Humanity house was made out of 3D printer concrete.
Printed concrete.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to think about is you have shipping logistics across a very large country. Most of the European manufacturers that do this and do it incredibly well, they would be small regional manufacturers here. So they're similar to like Geologic in Maine or Benson Wood, where they work in a very small regional area so that they can manage their shipping logistics and keep their costs down that way. You know, that's how Geologic and Unity and Benson Wood all do it. It says right on their website they'll erect your project within a certain area. Otherwise, they'll ship it to you and Godspeed to you to find somebody to put it up. So those are the first things that I think about. Anything over 8'6" wide is a wide load. Anything over 12 to 14 feet wide is a super wide load on the interstate system, which the costs to move that then just go
Triple.
up. Yeah, they go from like $2 or $4 a mile up to over $10 a mile, which negates any cost savings.
The thing I always point to about manufactured housing is you have to pay for the warehouse that you're building these houses in. You have to heat and cool and light it. If you're building a house out in what used to be a farm field, all those costs go away. And the transportation costs are absorbed by the people building it, not the trucking company that's getting it from the factory, right?
Yeah.
So
I sent you an email after I listened to your 3D printing one, Patrick, and I
you're
think
skeptical.
I'm very skeptical, but I'm also approaching it from being heavily invested in just doing what we do right now, but doing it better and using the existing ecosystem and infrastructure that we have. And personally, I think it's panelized work. Right now, Christy Weber, the design director at TDS, and I are looking into several options for panelizing the 4 new homes that we have in our design queue.
Can I
What-
interrupt you about panelizing? So in my experience, the framing is not the slow part. It's the fast part. It's the part that, there's little cost or little savings to happen with regard to panelizing. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right, but it's what else can you do in that
Right.
panelized unit? Can you insulate it? Can you
Install
put vertical
windows.
siding on it? Can you prep all of your window openings? And that looks a little bit like what Autovol is doing if you go down that YouTube rabbit hole, but to me, that's where it's at, is coming up with a way to ship parts of houses stacked on a trailer that is not going to be a wide load or some other kind of load that you can't get to your job site, and then doing as much as possible with that panel. It's like what New Frameworks in Vermont is doing with their straw bale insulated panels, and they're sending a near finished product out to a site to be erected.
But you only really ever hear of these, the type of panelization that you just described. I only ever hear about it in the context of high performance, very specialized custom homes. Like I
I
never.
think because that's the folks
hear-
who can pay for it.
Exactly.
They want
That's
this
the whole
thing.
point, right.
Yeah, they want
Versus-
this thing.
Why is 3D printing of concrete homes picking up? It's garnering some attention for affordable housing solutions.
I think it garners more attention because it is so just darn interesting, right? It's the world's hugest plotter.
Well, and also
it's
it's so
fascinating to watch.
fast. It's really fast. They erect these homes in a matter of, it seems like hours.
Well, I got to tell you, at one point in my life at Habitat for Humanity, we built an entire home in 84 hours. It just takes a ton of people. Housing can be built quickly.
I don't know if I think that panelization is going to ever pick up.
You poo-poo panelization,
a little
Kiley?
bit. I mean, I understand the idea behind it, and it makes good sense, but it just is so elitist.
Well, it doesn't have to
it
be.
is. I
I would love to
disagree.
see it applied in a different context, I guess.
I want to have another direction to this thought experiment. So we're printing with concrete, right? Concrete has a ton of embodied
Terrible.
energy. It's
Right.
very expensive material, right? As far as, so what if you were extruding like wood fiber in some kind of matrix? It's and it could have insulation as part of its conglomeration. Is that a word? No.
Yes, it is.
As makeup that comes out of the extruder, and then you build that up in layers, and it's got an insulating quality, a structural quality.
Well, heck, why don't you just throw the vapor barrier and the WRB and the range screen?
Electrical cable.
Yeah, just get it all in there.
Just squirt that all out.
One big slush.
I have trouble calling it 3D printed houses. Well, these are concrete houses without formwork. And I think Zach made that point too. Is it's just a different way to cast concrete. And maybe it's better, maybe it's not. I don't know. I think it's got some serious limitations. He was telling me, it has to be on a flat lot, which is very limiting. That means it's going to be farmland that's no longer farmland. It's not infill. But it could be infill if, it's multifamily, which maybe it starts to make more sense for the equipment you need.
Do you think that panelization is happening in more multifamily projects, which is not something we cover a lot, so I don't necessarily hear about it a lot?
I think it is, and I think modular too.
Yeah.
And those CLT buildings seem to be getting some traction in multifamily
You need the
housing.
scale, though. They don't.
Yeah.
It's hard to scale that down to a single family home,
Right.
which I think goes back to Carson's point why automation hasn't taken over the industry of building single family homes, because it's not really a manufacturing endeavor to build a house. Manufacturing is building multiple copies of the same thing that's easy to move and easy to get to your consumer.
Yeah.
Well, I welcome any listener or comments about the future of home building, because I think it is a super interesting exercise, and I don't know. It's a complex issue for.
Sure is.
I think
Number of
one of the
reasons.
things that you're going to see more of in the future is people doing what Sarah and I did, what Brian did, and just building your own house. And maybe it's going to take you a while longer. And yes, Brian and I are in the industry, but I think with the work that we're doing with the podcast and a lot of the articles and things that people write, it is going to help more people take that on.
And it might not be a new
those-
build. It might be a
Right.
rehab or, improving the energy performance of your starter house.
Yeah.
Well, I want to remind everyone that on Thursday, April 21st, is the first Pro Talk live event at Red East Event Space, Southeast Salmon Street, Portland, Oregon. We have great speakers. It should be a fun day. If you haven't signed up for it, I hope you will, because it'll be super fun, and it'll be the first time I've been around anyone in 2 years. So I look forward to that. Thoughts from the team?
Are you going to that, Ian? Will you be there?
No. Patrick didn't invite me.
I begged Andrew to come with me yesterday, so
Oh, yeah?
he's
Is he
going to be
going?
there. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I said I would need some moral support.
Right, yeah.
I'm
It
a
shouldn't
little
just be you.
nervous.
Yeah, sure.
I'm looking forward to the next time you guys do a summit.
Yeah, me
that
too.
might be
Me too.
my
Yeah.
first reason to return to the Northeast.
Somebody was asking me about, well, we might not do it in the Northeast. The last two
Maybe Austin.
destinations. Yeah,
I
Austin
heard
and
Austin.
Colorado, too, we've been
Wow.
talking about.
So, listeners, if you have any thoughts on the summit, where it should be, what you want to hear, what you want to see, let us know, please. We
Our
always
speakers?
Yeah, love your feedback, and I mean that with all sincerity. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Jeff, Kiley, and Ian for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep crafting alive. Send us those spreadsheets.